Dogmatism or dogma is at its core a rational and unquestioning support. A dogmatic view could conceivably be just about any view. Dogma is defined less by the contents of the belief and more by the way in which it is held. Views which are accepted and held unquestioningly and uncritically are dogmatic views. They are examples of dogma. Dogmatic individuals typically avoid introspection and critical thinking. Doing these things necessarily leads to the abandonment of dogmatism. If dogmatism is unquestioning support, then to question is to cease to be a dogmatist. I think dogmatism is inherently at odds with progressivism. I think that dogmatism is in many ways a conservative tendency and moral basis that gets in the way of intellectual progression. It is not progressive or regressive. It seems to more often than not simply replicate something that it has observed or quite often been spoon-fed by the society. Dogmatic views are normally inherited from an environment and not expanded upon anywhere other than at the most surface level. They are perceived, taken to be objective fact, and then replicated with not a moment of introspection or rational thought. Dogmatic views are based around assumptions, unquestioning and uncritical support. Their foundational portions remain completely unchanged because in order to advance and improve your foundations, you must engage in rational introspection and critical thinking. In order to improve, advance, and progress your more foundational understandings, you must abandon dogma. The only way a dogmatic individual can change their foundational views is by abandoning the old dogma in favor of another set of dogmatic beliefs. This is not progress. It is just a replication of another currently existing perceived view. Dogmatists cannot build their own foundations either, because that would require introspection and critical thinking. Instead, they must observe one and then replicate it. Dogma does not allow for the central components of a person's worldview to improve, advance, and progress, because this requires critical thinking, rationality, and introspection, which is inherently at odds with dogmatism. The dogmatist replicates a worldview rather than building one, because building a worldview requires introspection and critical thinking. The dogmatist is inherently conservative at their core. Perhaps their politics is progressive, but they will never advance much further than their current positions unless they abandon dogmatism. Dogmatism freezes the core of their intellectual development in time. Perhaps a surface-level belief will change on occasion, but the more core components remain frozen in time, conserved by dogma, incapable of any fundamental advancement or progression due to the intellectual shackles of dogma. Progressivism is at its core based upon critical thinking, rational analysis, and introspection. These things are at odds with dogma. Dogma is at its core unquestioning support. Few things are as antithetical to progressivism and left-wing thought as unquestioning support. Unquestioning support is perhaps the greatest enemy of the progressive left, and it is embodied in dogma. The progressive left is what it is because it engages in rigorous rational analysis, uncontrolled critical thinking, and endless introspection. The progressive left was born out of these things, and it is vital that we maintain them. Without these things, the progressive left is nothing, and the embodiment of these things is dogma. Dogma is a force of conservatism, because it restricts our understandings from ever advancing and progressing past the point of replication and unquestioning support. Dogma is our enemy. Unquestioning support is our enemy. Baseless belief is our enemy. Progressive leftism isn't just about supporting minorities, as important as that is. It is about improving, advancing, and progressing our most fundamental understandings, and dogma is antithetical to that goal. Progressivism means progress on every level. It means intellectual progress, and dogma gets in the way of that. Dogma is the enemy of progressivism. It is nothing but a tool of intellectual repression and limitation.